Hello, everyone. I'm so excited today. I've been looking forward to this conversation after I spoke with Bonnie last week. She recommended to reach out to Nina, and I loved her channel. So it's amazing. I definitely recommend for you to check her out. I'm going to put that link in the bottom, and I'm going to allow Nina to introduce herself.
Thank you. Yeah, so excited and honored to be here with you today. Yeah, my name is Nina Itzel, and I'm a therapist, I'm a healer, and a teacher and a student at the same time, wearing many different hats, like most of us, I think. I specialize in ayahuasca assisted therapy. So this is basically a therapeutic process when I create, a therapeutic container for people to process mostly, past trauma and take back the power over their health and their life. And we use this medicine, the ayahuasca, as a catalyst, to bring up those, deep content and information that we normally are not aware of, that we either intentionally or without intention keep suppressed. So this medicine helped me a lot to access parts of myself that, with other tools, it was very difficult to access, or it just took like a long time to go there. So I had such great experience, in my healing journey using this particular plant that I decided, to bring it into my own practice and to offer it to people who resonate with this particular path. But I always say that you don't need to take this medicine. You can go, there is many paths to lead to the same destination. And without this medicine, you can also heal and, come back to your true nature and to your original state of wholeness. But I definitely think that based on my experience, this I don't want to say shortcut, because I think it's like people associate different things to that word, but definitely it speeds up the process, but it's also intensifies it. So it's like taking a magnifying glass. And so it's not everybody's path, I think it is a warrior path. And that's what I'm into nowadays, to support people on this journey who are resonating with this particular path and feel called to work with this particular plant. And me myself, I'm not a shaman, so I don't serve the medicine. I don't give medicine to anybody. I work with people who are holding ceremonial space and who work with, integrity and transparency. What I do is I do the preparation. I have people to prepare, for the ceremony. And then I do a 1-year integration program that is basically help people to work through all that content that is arising, after a ceremony, and to connect to their own source of power, their own source of, healing and light. So we don't need, any external, may that be a pharmaceutical or a plant or a therapist. So the goal here for me is to, connect to that power that is within us all, and to draw from that power, so we are not relying on external things anymore, and we can navigate our life and or challenges, with a greater ease and grace.
Right. But you also do a lot more than integration. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, before, I came to the medicine, like originally I was a psychologist, and then I went more into alternative medicine, from breath work to, yoga therapy and different energy healing modalities like shamanic practices, so on and so forth. So I'm just in the business of healing, so to say. So, and I, during the years, like walking this path of the wounded healer, I think, many healers and teachers can relate to this, that we embarked on this journey to find our own answers and to bring about our own healing. And as you walk this path, you learn, so much, and after a while, you have this greater experience and wisdom and tools, that you feel called to share with others. So I do many different projects and programs that is all related, to healing. So in the past, I worked with many people without the medicine, just work with them, with different tools. Like nowadays, most of the people who I work with is come because of the medicine, and it's more kind of my niche, because I think there is not a lot of people who do this type of work, while there is a lot of good therapists, in like any given modality. And the medicine coming into the West, with such a ferocity, the last few years, so many people are interested. And there is very little, speak about the integration and what happens, after you leave the ceremony or the retreat. But basically, anything that is connected to healing. The people who I work with most is basically two categories. Like one of the big categories, people who have chronic disease. A lot of people that I get are with autoimmune diseases or cancer, anxiety, depression, addiction, eating disorders, things like that. So people who suffer for a long time with something chronic, this can be mental, emotional, physical, and they tried many different things and they still sick, they still not well, and they are kind of at a breaking point. They are like, okay, either I find something to turn my life around, or I just don't want to be here anymore. Or they went to allopathic medicine and they tried everything, and they are kind of disappointed, and they are looking for something different, some different tool that can assist them in their own healing. So that's one of the big category. And the other one is more like younger people, like end of 20s, beginning of 30s, who are coming to this path, not because they have necessarily, huge personal challenges, but more like, what is my life purpose? Why I'm here on this planet? How can I access my own gifts and bring that out and share it with the world? So, that kind of like soul searching, journey, that is also like a big category. And I also work a lot with people with PTSD and complex PTSD. So people who went through severe trauma in their life, work with just a lot with people who experience like sexual abuse and sexual and ritual abuse, especially women. I have way more women clients than men. And, this is something that I can relate to. So I think, that's one of the reasons, that people coming to me with these type of problems, but just in general, like childhood trauma and processing childhood trauma, because I think, this is something that just started not so long ago, that people are looking into their life and say, hey, maybe I have a lot of stuff in the closet that I never dealt with, and it is time to look at these things. And I was just talking with a colleague of mine, and we were saying that I think maybe we are the first generation, especially in Europe or Eastern Europe, who are doing, this kind of healing and self-discovery, because certainly my parents' generation, they didn't go to therapy. Like their kind of perspective was that if you go to a psychologist, that means you're crazy, you're a crazy person, and that is something bad. So, and my grandparents' generation, they never even talked about, stuff. They were just like, we don't talk about these things. It's just like, let's just put it under the carpet and leave it there and not talk about it. So I think, that our generation, is this first generation who is actively, looking into this and taking that responsibility. So what that came to is that we don't need to deal with only our own trauma and our own issues, but we are kind of healing, everything that was passed down the lineage, because,
Right.
we are all connected. So um, it's it's a big undertaking, but I'm happy to be part of this type of revolution. And yeah, just saying that, okay, this is where it stops with me now, and that is
Wow.
something that I'm not gonna bring forward. And when you do this type of healing work, I think it's you are healing not just yourself, but you healing your ancestors, and you
Of
healing
course.
your children, and the future generations. So from that perspective, I think it's a collective service, to do this type of
Absolutely.
healing work.
Can you talk to us? You mentioned a couple of things that I definitely want to get into. The wounded healer. For those that don't understand what that is, can you give us a breakdown?
Yeah, what was that?
The wounded healer. You mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah.
For those that don't know what that means, can you give us a breakdown?
Yeah, so I think, my experience is that I came to the healing path because I was deeply unhappy with my life. I did suffer, from physical problems. I had a lot of anxiety, and I was just unhappy. I didn't feel I belong. I felt very lost, in the world that I was in. And I think the first period was kind of blaming others and my parents and the society and
Yeah.
everything for my problems. But after a while, I couldn't help but notice that I am the common dominator, in all these stories. So
Oh boy.
maybe there is something within me, that is creating these type of experiences and my own suffering. So that was the time, I think I was around 18, when I changed the direction of my search, and I started to go within me and ask for help and go to therapy. And of course, I went to study psychology. I can definitely say, that there is this saying between psychologists that the most fucked up people go to psychology. And I think it is true, like in general, that a lot of people, go because you are looking for answers for yourself. I wanted to understand myself and my world better, and that's why I went into this direction. I wanted to help myself, I wanted to do something about,
Right.
the situation I was in. And that's what I call kind of the wounded healer, that you are suffering, and your own suffering pushes you into that direction of search within yourself, and to learn about healing, and to train in different modalities. And once you start getting better, if you are doing it good, because whatever you're doing, if it's not helping, that's not a good thing to do. So
Right.
um once you're getting better, and I started to feel better and more empowered and more confident and more aware, and I had all these tools, that helped me. I think that there is a natural desire in people when they want to share that and help others. They say, hey, I was there too, and now I'm better. So
Right.
here is the information for you, how you can also do that. You can also help yourself. You can also get better. So I think that a lot of people, on this path come from this background, that their own suffering, motivated their search and their healing journey. And once, they come to a certain stage of wellness, you are able to hold space for each other. Because I think, at the beginning, certainly there was many years that it was all about me and my process and my journey and my trauma. And I really needed all my attention and all my resources to focus on myself,
Mm-hmm.
to feel better, to get better. But I think that there is a point when, you reach that point that, okay, I still can continue with this work, and it will be always part of my life, but now I have space to focus on other people as well. And that's when, people start to go into offering, their services to other people, because this is an ongoing journey, and I never stop, and I always have teachers, and I always have, kind of things that I'm working on and processing and, improving,
Of
hopefully.
course.
But after a while, my experience is that it's not so all consuming. So then you have more space, you know, in your life, and you have more capacity to include others, you know, in that journey as well. So that's what I mean by the wounded healer. I think you know, a lot of people can relate to that. Was this answer to your question?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think for a lot of people that didn't understand the term, I wanted them to hear from you. But also, I was also interested in knowing about the shadow aspect, and when you realize, oh my God, the really the common denominator here is me. What does that mean? What are the everything that I'm triggered by? What is that showing about me? What do I need to heal? So working with those shadow aspects, and I know you talked about the shadow aspects and the dark night of the soul. So hopefully you get to share with us your perspective on the shadow selves and the dark night of the soul.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think, you know, my interpretation of the shadow is everything that is unconscious within us. You know, a lot of people use this metaphor of an iceberg with the top being out of the water and the 90% of the iceberg being under the water to symbolize the psyche and the conscious and the unconscious part of the psyche. So it's basically about 5% of our psyche that is conscious, that we are aware of, and the 95% is unconscious, so we are not aware of. And that content that is in the unconscious is are parts of ourselves that we pushed away, we rejected, we denied in ourselves. We, like, basically like everything that you say, I am not that.
Yeah.
You know, that is pushed into that unconscious part, into that shadow aspect. And this suppression or repression can be conscious or can be unconscious. You know, a lot of people have trauma that they do not recall, you know, that their psyche suppressed, you know, for survival, basically, for self-defense. And that's not a bad thing. That's a survival mechanism, because, you know, especially with childhood trauma, you know, we are not equipped, you know, to deal with certain things, you know, when we are young, when we are without resources, when we are without awareness. So that suppression can happen, you know, unconsciously, and then we can suppress things consciously. That's saying, I'm aware that there is some problem here, but I'm not gonna think about it.
Right.
Not gonna, you know, I'm just gonna go away from it and not towards it. So we do this, you know, in various ways. And you know, like a picture that I use to explain this to people, that if you just think about a circle as a representation of you, or a sphere, you know, and there is that wholeness that we associate with the circle, you know, and it's one thing, and it's like all complete and whole.
Right.
And we go through life, and we go through experiences, and we have trauma, and there is like cracks, you know, in this circle. So we start to kind of fragment, and little pieces break off, and we shove it here and shove it there. And, you know, this fragmentation just keeps happening. So after a while, we can become so fragmented that we become physically sick, or, you know, we can, you know, mentally break down, you know, we can emotionally break down. And it can result into a state when we simply are not able to function, you know, anymore in a coherent way in this world. So for me, healing is really, you know, gluing that pieces back together. So defragmenting, you know, bringing those fragments back, and like you put together a puzzle, so to say, and to make that picture, and to invite those parts. And each part we invite, you know, from the unconscious, from that shadow part, we look at and we face. And then we extend our love and our compassion and our understanding and acceptance towards that part. And that's what it means to integrate that fragment. And as we keep doing this, we start to feel more wholesome, and we start to feel more healthy and more confident and more empowered and more aware. you know, in many ways. And I think that's what healing is for me, to come back on that natural state of
Mm-hmm.
wholeness. And if you look at the world, I think, you know, you can see it in nature, that nature goes towards equilibrium and balance. You know, if you look at the system of nature, everything goes towards equilibrium and balance. If you have a glass of water and you shake it, the water will go all over, and then you put the glass down and you do not touch it, it will go back into stillness. So I think, you know, that the universal energies in nature and the universe, you know, supports us in this movement, because that's natural, to be whole and to be connected. And what is unnatural is to be fragmented and to be traumatized. And yeah, so the shadow work for me, what it means is just to, you know, investigate that unconscious, and to become aware, to bring the light of awareness, so to say, onto these little shadow pieces, and to reach out and to say, I love you, and I see you, and I hear you, and please come back to me, you
Yeah,
know.
and that's very hard though to do that with, you know, I know when I was working on shadows, and trust me, I think it's a long-term process. It's hard to allow ourselves to be vulnerable with ourselves. Imagine with someone that you just meet and becomes your coach, right? Like someone that is your integration coach, therapist. And to be that fragile, sometimes we feel like we're going to break into pieces, and we might not know if we can pick it up and put it back together. So that fear is there of, if I allow myself, I might not be able to put myself back together, by allowing myself to really experience and feel what I'm blocking, what is in the shadow that I need to bring to the light.
Absolutely, you are so right. And I think that's the main reason that holds people back from doing this kind of work, that deep innate fear that I might lose it and
Yeah.
go crazy or whatever, and go insane, and not being able to function, you know, even on the level that I'm functioning right now. And I think that is the responsibility and the duty of a therapist, of a healer, of a space holder, to create a safe place where people feel safe to go to these very sensitive places, and to touch those places, and to open certain doors that they are afraid to open and look into. So, you know, I'm not saying you can't do it alone, because definitely I think everything is possible. But I would say that it is very, very hard to do it alone. So one thing that you can do for yourself is to reach out for support, to find, you know, somebody who can support you on this journey, somebody who, first of all, went through these things, so has own experience, you know, that they also, you know, have expertise, so they are trained, you know, in different modalities. Because just you going through your own process, it doesn't mean, you know, that you will be able to hold space for each other. I always use this metaphor of learning a language, you know. Just because you speak English, that doesn't mean you can teach English to a non-English speaker, you know. So so that, yeah, and you know, just to find somebody who you resonate with, who you can trust, and you have a good, you know, connection to, and you feel safe with. And certainly that's what I feel my main work is, to create these safe places where people can allow themselves, you know, to go through difficult moments, and you know, come back to themselves, because they feel safe, you know, they know that, okay, there is somebody here who is holding space for me and who can guide me, and I trust that person more than I would trust myself. So it's very important that we have this kind of support system, because otherwise I think most people give up at one point, because the fear is too much, you know, to go there. And it could be, you know, sometimes those experiences can be re-traumatizing if you are not in a
Mm-hmm.
in a safe place,
Right.
just to revisit trauma, it's not healing in itself, just to go
Absolutely.
back to a traumatic experience. That's not what healing is. Healing is what you're gonna do with that, and what's gonna happen after. So, and that's what I think it's very good, if you have an ally, a guide
Absolutely.
who can, support you.
Yeah. Do you think that when you're working with the dark, with the shadow self, this is basically correlated very closely with the dark night of the soul? For example, if I'm working on a lot of my shadow aspects, I am also going through, I consider the dark night of the soul, because I am, and sometimes it's not just one, it might be more than one dark night of the soul, where like, oh my God, I'm back here again. Have you found that this shadow aspect working within also happens during the dark night of the soul, or no?
Absolutely. I think that for me, the dark night of the soul is really when you are uprooting something, and you are going through a very challenging time. So as soon as you start this journey and you start going within yourself and into that unconscious part, into that shadow aspect, and you start opening all these doors, when all these
Yeah.
ghosts and past memories start coming at you, there is a point when there is a certain overwhelm, and as you start processing, that content, things start changing in your life. But you know important thing to understand that things get worse before they get better. So if you embark on this journey, you don't expect that, okay, from next month I'm gonna feel amazing. But what happens is that first you're gonna go into that shadow, and once you go deep into that shadow and you start working through things, you start shifting the energy in a major way in all areas of your life. So just to tell an example, for example, a dark night of the soul can look like eh, basically like a carpet pulled out under your feet, everything going bad at the same time. You break
Right.
up with your partner, or you divorce, you get diagnosed with some disease, your children don't talk to you, you lose your job, you get broke, you lose your savings, whatever. And all these things happening at the same time, as a consequence of that conscious work that you are doing and shifting the energy and
Right.
shifting the dynamic in your life. So I always say that first we need to break down things so we can build new healthy things.
Right.
The
Right.
dysfunction needs to be broken down, and that breaking down manifests in your life mostly these ways, losing relationships, losing loved ones, losing safety and security. So things that used to give you comfort and safety and security, like a job, like a partner, your health, all these things being taken away suddenly from you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come to this point of overwhelm. We are like, oh my God, like there is nothing to hold on to. Everything that was familiar, even though maybe not healthy, but familiar,
Right.
gave me a sense of security, in some way. Those things are gone. That's what I call the dark night of the soul, when we are in this deep, deep discomfort, and or crutches
Yeah.
are not there anymore, and we are like, ah,
Right.
freak out moment. And from there, as I say, once you are on the bottom of the pit, there is only one way to go: upwards and out, So from there is a shift of energy, and that's when it starts the integration and the improvement, in your life. And as you say, we can go through this dark night of the soul experiences many times over our life.
Right.
I certainly have, and probably I will be. But I think the good part of it is that when you are going through it the first time, it's very, very scary, because you really think you're gonna die. You're gonna go crazy, you're gonna go homeless or whatever, and deep, deep fears are coming up. through that moment, and you are not sure that you will make it through, that you will come back,
Right.
and so I think the first time is the most overwhelming, because there is that uncertainty. I used, even though I explain people that this is part of the process and you will come out of it and you will be fine and good things will come, just trust the process. But without any experience, the fear is very overwhelming. As you went through at least one dark night of the soul, the next time you are going through, now you have a little bit of experience of saying, okay, this is, I did experience this before or similar and I was fine. So probably I will be fine after this as well. And so on and so forth. As you go through more experiences like that, you develop an ability to navigate better and to so-called ride the waves, instead of drowning and being dragged, and just suffering a lot in the process. So it's not that, there will be no more dark nights, but you will respond to it in a very different way that will ease your experience, and it will be not so destabilizing and scary anymore. And I think that's one sign of the healing, that is like, okay, like the last experience I went through was, quite recent, actually, in the last 2 years. Everything that is happening in the world, I'm pretty sure that it brought up a lot of fear, for a lot of people, and especially fear of death, which is our biggest fear. And when I had this intense experience, even though I was in discomfort, I still was at the same time in gratitude, because I know from my experience that this is a point of liberation for me. This is something that, I really needed to bring back this peace to myself, and it's gonna be awesome, when I'm on the other side, I'm gonna be free from this. So that makes it very different, the experience.
Yeah, I love that. I when I think of the Dark Knight, I think of the tower moment in the tarot.
Absolutely.
Boom, everything is coming to an end. And, normally we see that with the energy of the moon. And that reminds me of the divine feminine, and how this dark night of the soul is actually for us to go so deep into the hidden in order for us to raise our level of consciousness. So I always, it's a little scary because we don't know what we're going to find. But when we come out, we become wiser and stronger.
Absolutely. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's very true.
Yeah. And I also saw, Nina, that you talked about the rebirthing process. How does that look for someone that has no idea what a rebirthing process is? How do you take them through that process?
Okay. Wow, this is such a huge topic. One of my first alternative training was in rebirthing, or breath work. Some, there is holotropic breath work. There is other different types of breath work, but it's basically using breathing to induce a non-ordinary state of consciousness. So with our breath, we are literally changing the brain waves, and go into a slightly altered state. And the reason for that is to access those parts who are normally we wouldn't be aware of, because they are suppressed, into the unconscious. And Dr. Stanislav Grof, the father of rebirthing and holotropic breath work, they called it rebirthing because they discovered that if they went deep enough, into people's individual trauma, that almost all trauma went back into the birth experience, and that's where it started. Of course, you can go beyond that, but now we're just talking about this lifetime. So when we come into this world, if you align with that spiritual worldview that we are spiritual beings, having a physical body, then what this means is that we are coming from a spiritual realm, a non-physical reality, and we are coming into this physical body to have this particular experience, in this reality. And how that happens has a major impact in our life. And if you look at history and culture, 100 years ago, there were no not like mostly people were born at home with midwives.
Yeah.
And with women, with wise women, holding space and being at home, being in your bed, it was a very different experience. So a lot of people, especially in the West, have trauma that started, at the birth. How did you come into this world? How was that experience for you? The gestation and then the delivery. This
Yeah.
whole experience. And I certainly had a lot of personal experience. My birth was very difficult. Like my mother couldn't conceive. She had to go through all these painful procedures in order to conceive. Then she had a lot of fear during the pregnancy. And then, the birth itself was very difficult and long for her. And eventually they had to use like a vacuum type of machine similar to forceps to actually take me out, because I could not be born in a natural way without any assistance. So that impacted me hugely, that in a way that I was not aware of until I started to do these type of practices. What happens is that when we go through the birth experience, we create a so-called limbic imprint. So that is, before we have language, after you start speaking, your memories are stored in the neocortex. But before that, your memories are stored in the limbic part of the brain and the reptilian brain. And these are emotional memories and somatic memories. Instead of visual, like a video, that is recorded in the frontal lobe. So, we create this limbic imprint when, you basically come up with a basic definition of what love is. That was my experience. So because of the painful experience that I had during my birth and the obstacles that I experienced, my limbic imprint was that love hurts. That love is something painful because all these people who are supposed to love me, they are causing pain. So that what love must be, and then I operated out of that paradigm, for a long time. And I created scenarios when it was mirrored back to me that this is what I believe, that love equals suffering, or pain.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people have traumatic birth experiences. So when we are talking about rebirthing, that's one part of it, is to go back to your particular birth experience and correct it, so to say, and so your life path and your patterning can be corrected, that is more healthy and more constructive instead of like dysfunctional or destructive. But when I talk about rebirthing, I don't only refer to the physical birth experience, but I refer to, mental, emotional, spiritual rebirthing, which is, when you go through like a life-changing experience, you are literally a new person.
Right.
You are not who you used to be. You don't behave that way. You don't think that way, so you are a different person. And of course, that's true for every day you wake up and you are a new person, because you are not the same, you cannot step in the same river twice, so to say. But what I'm referring here to is this major experience, this kind of dark night of the soul experience that fundamentally shifts your perception of yourself, the perception of the world. Who do you think you are? How do you think the world operates? How do you relate to things, people, places, so on and so forth. So when you go through kind of these type of experiences, I call it a rebirthing experience, because you just change so much that we say that you are reborn. You are not who you used to be. You are a very different person. So it is a rebirthing,
I love that. I love that. Yeah, and the reason why I love that is because I was just talking to someone about this, how when we go through this major shift in our lives, we become someone new. Our level of consciousness has expanded somewhat, so we become someone new. And things that we used to do are no longer seen with the same eyes. And we can analyze them and we can say, you know, that doesn't work anymore. That was the old me. And now I am this new person and I choose different things. So this term of the rebirthing process is lovely. I love that. So when someone is going through this, are you basically doing this with the integration and breath work to get
Yes.
the rebirth?
Yeah, so, I use certain tools, in my practice that I'm familiar with, or, I find, beneficial. These are all tools that I experienced myself. So, I had a positive experience, and then I was also called, to learn about these tools more. So one of the tool I use, in my practice is breath work. Sometimes we do work, with the physical birth experience, if that was so traumatic, for the person as well, but not necessarily. I use breath work for more like emotional release. That's the main tool I use for emotional release. Like, we all have a lot of suppressed emotions, especially in the West. We live in a culture where we learned from a very early age that these are the emotions that it's okay to feel and express, and there are certain emotions that you shouldn't feel or express, like anger or sadness or whatever, and you should just swallow it down and
Right.
not display any of that. So, there is a lot of emotions that we suppress during our life, and we are not familiar with feeling, and we are not comfortable feeling, like fear. Who wants to feel fear? Like, nobody wants to feel afraid. That's not a comfortable feeling. Grief, shame, guilt, anger, sadness. Sometimes these are, emotions that we are not comfortable with, because we are taught that they are negative or bad and you shouldn't feel this way. So, from my perspective, one big aspect of healing is reclaim or right to feel. We are feeling beings. If you don't have feelings, you are a robot, you're a zombie. I think feeling, the feeling nature makes us human.
Yeah.
Not only that, but that is a huge part of being a human being, to be able to feel. And also, how you experience your life. You can have all the riches and all the fame in the world if you do not feel good. If you are emotionally unwell and you do not enjoy your life and you suffer, then all those things mean nothing. So I think it's very important, when we talk about healing, to embrace that feeling nature that we have. And for this, we need to relearn what we what we were taught
Yeah.
about emotions. We need to learn how to give ourselves permission to feel what is arising, and how to express it in a healthy way without projecting it onto other people, without lashing out, without hurting others, but take responsibility and allow ourselves, to give expression, to give space, to that emotion, whatever that may be. And this starts with like a type of emptying. So all the things that you suppress in the past, they have to come out. In order to be well. So I use breath work to access that part and to help people to process emotionally, with the breath. Because what happens, when you are in this stress, you are like, you
Mm.
stop breathing, or you breathe very shallow, that kind of way. So just with certain types of breathing and certain exercises, with breathing, you can help yourself to move through those intensity, move through that difficult space, that uncomfortable emotion. You can learn and train yourself that it's okay, I am safe, it's okay to feel this. And Let's breathe into that, and let's use the breath to welcome that emotion, and then to exhale and to let go and to release it. So I find that breath is one of the most powerful tool for that, and also to stay present, not to escape, and detach, from ourselves, but to be here and to kind of ride the wave, So that's one thing. I use certain shamanic practices like soul retrieval, or shamanic journeying to help people to retrieve, parts of themselves who were fragmented off and then like located, some further place, somewhere out there, and to facilitate more that like spiritual kind of wholeness. And on the mental level, I use compassionate inquiry, which is basically helping people with certain questions to go deeper into their mind, and to uncover unconscious beliefs, that may, for example, that what I mentioned earlier, love hurts, that was one of my unconscious belief. And obviously I know that that's not true. I know that whatever hurts is not love, because love doesn't hurt at all, but still, we do have this, deep core beliefs like salvation is through sacrifice, that's one of them. Money is root of all evil, and so on and so forth. There is some general ones that most people do have, and then there can be particular ones to each individual based on their experiences. And we create our reality with our mind. So once you have deep core beliefs, then you creating from that place, and you are creating experiences that will validate that for you. So this type of compassionate inquiry helps people to uncover, what are my core beliefs that are creating this undesirable behavior that, is manifesting in my life. And then guess what? You can change your mind, you can change it. And Byron Katie is really great in that with the work, to question your own beliefs. Is this true? How would I feel, if I wouldn't have this belief, so on and so forth. So there is like many tools, but that's also a big part of the work, to work with the mind, because the mind is the most powerful tool, in order to create a reality. And then on the physical level, I use yoga therapy, like trauma-informed yoga therapy, and somatic experiencing. Those are my two main tools, because the issues are in the tissues, and that's very true. So the body holds the score, you go through difficult things. And, when I was born, because of this procedure during my birth, they broke my collarbone in like this side, and they didn't notice. So my parents took me home, and I was just crying all the time. So in a couple of weeks, they took me back to the hospital, and then they discovered that my collarbone is broken. And obviously my parents were bathing me and dressing me without knowing, I'm in so much pain. So anyways, that injury caused, a misalignment in my body. I had a lot of problems when I was older with my shoulder, like frozen shoulder, restriction of movement, so on and so forth. So, this manifested in my physical body as challenges and limitations. And many, many years later, when I had my own physical practice, which is a combination of Tai Chi, Qigong, and Hatha Yoga that I do every day, that, helped me really to start opening, this area that was kind of locked in and like, kind of constricted, and start opening my body. And as I started to do that through my body, I accessed, the memory of that injury that was there and the pain that was there. And I had physical pain for about 6 months. Maybe it was, it wasn't so bad, but for 2 months, it was very intense that I could not sleep properly and I didn't have any comfortable position. So that was, just an example of how your body is holding memory, the physical body is holding memory of injury, of trauma, of, violation that happened to you. So it's not enough, to work only with your mind, only with your emotion and so on and so forth, but we have to work with the body as well, and to open the body and to align the body and to listen to the body and to, soften our body, because as we go through these experiences, we become just harsh and tense and closed in, and that can cause pain and all kinds of problems. For example, another example that I can bring, I had a lot of anxiety when I was a child, but I didn't know that it's anxiety. What I knew, that I have pain in my stomach. That's what I said. I just have pain in my stomach. So my body, like my parents took me everywhere, when they couldn't find anything wrong with my body, because it wasn't that, it was just with the child's language. The child doesn't say, hey, I feel anxious. And they say, I have pain in my tummy. That's what they say. Yeah. And, later I discovered, and then later I had just, all kinds of digestive issues and things like that. And I went vegan and raw and all these things for a while, to try to fix these problems. But eventually what it was, that the anxiety that I was holding in my body, like, caused a tightness and a tension in my body, and especially in my belly. So for all of you who are listening, observe in yourself. If you feel anxious, if you feel afraid, you're going to hold your stomach in. Your stomach is going to be like hard rock, it's going to be like. So when somebody has anxiety, your body is holding that tension, and then the circulation is not proper in your vital organs. There is not enough blood flow, there is not enough oxygen, there is not enough elimination of the toxins. And I can tell you that I went through all different diets and supplements and colon hydrotherapy and all this, and not saying these were not helpful and useful, but it didn't really solve the root of the problem. So what helped me with the digestive issues is to deal with the anxiety and to train my body that your natural state is relaxed. Your tummy should be relaxed and soft. So if you are listening, you can put your hand now and push into your stomach. And if you can't push in, and if it's hard, then either you are a bodybuilder, and that's one category, but if you are just a normal person, then probably you are holding anxiety there, So as I started releasing the anxiety and softening my body and training my body to relax, and that took me months and months. And every time I would, not aware, and then I would like, okay, I'm holding my stomach again. Let's just relax. And then 10 minutes later, it was back again, because it was wired, so that required, quite a bit of time to reprogram my body. And this happened through movement and through physical exercises and trauma release exercises and so on and so forth. And as a result of that, 95% of all my digestive problems just disappeared. Beautiful. I could eat anything, I was fine, so I think, that it's important that we deal with the issues on every level, on the level of the body, on the level of the emotions, the level of the mind and the head and the psyche, and also like spiritually as well, so that's why I think, that talk therapy in itself is not super effective. You can talk about stuff forever and nothing is going to really change,
Right. And I also saw that you do quantum healing. Did I misread that?
Well, I was trained in that. I think it's hard to distinguish the tools, because I had this 15-year period of my life when I was like from one training to another to another retreat, another training, because I was just like, I want to learn everything, I want to know everything, you know, I want to experience everything. So I think, you know, what I do today is like a combination of everything that I learned. I work on a very intuitive level. So that means, you know, when I have a session with a client, I don't plan out before, okay, this is what we're going to talk about, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to say. But I just more sit in prayer and in meditation for a few minutes before, you know, to make sure that I set up that sacred space, that I align myself with the highest intention, you know, to be a clear channel for that healing that needs to happen, you know, in that container, in that moment for that person. And really not to try to have any preconceived ideas of what is happening to that person or what do they need, because I really don't know, you know, like, but what happens is that I'm just, you know, really present. And as we start, you know, talking and things unfold, I just use, you know, intuitive guidance in terms of, okay, right now, let's do this exercise, or let's do this breathing, or let's lay down and do that, or let's talk about this, you know, depending on what is going on. And I think that's where the spiritual side comes in, and that kind of trust that I don't have to know the answer to all of the things, because I'm just a human and life is a mystery, you know, and it's so much bigger than me. And there is no way that with my little human mind, I'm going to figure it all out. So to kind of give it over to that higher power, may that be whatever you believe in, like God or the universe or Mother Earth or yourself, you know, like depending on your belief system, and trusting that we are held and we are guided and we are in a space in the universe that is benevolent and that wants our good, that wants our healing. And if we can just be present and be open and be willing to listen, then it's all there, you know, what we need to do in any given moment. And I think, you know, that requires a deep state of trust. And if you are afraid, you are not trusting. So it's impossible to trust and to be afraid. So you're either afraid or you are in trust, you know. And I think, you know, that, you know, one big part of the healing is to let go of the fear that we acquired, you know, I mean, from an early age. Don't do that, don't do this, oh, a spider, oh, you're gonna fall out the window. So, you know, if you look at little children, they don't have much fear, you know, they are just like, yeah, trusting everybody, like, that's our natural state, is not fear. I really feel that fear is that we learn, you know, we are told you should be afraid of this, you should be afraid of that. And, you know, we can see this so much in the last 2 years, you know, in the world where there is this pathogen and this invisible something that's going to kill us all, and we all have to be afraid and terrified. And, you know, I'm not saying, you know, that there is no need for concern, I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just saying that fear doesn't have, you know, fear will make things worse. You know, what we need is to, hey, let's calm down. You know, we can figure this out, we can move through this, you know, there is many tools and resources that we can use, you know, to navigate this particular experience. And let's trust that we're gonna get through this, and we're gonna be fine. You know, that is much more healthy and beneficial psychologically and emotionally than to scare people and say, you're gonna die, your family is gonna die, everybody is gonna die, oh, Armageddon is coming, you know, like that's
definitely
that just intensifies, you know, the fear that we already have, you know. And I do not see how that could be helpful, you know, in this situation.
Right. I definitely think we're going through a collective dark night of the soul.
Absolutely.
Totally. It's like we're gonna make it. We just gotta push a little harder.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you tell us before we end today's conversation about your book? I know you have a book out, and I just
Yes.
want everybody to know about it so they can check it out.
Yes, yes, that's really a labor of love. It's available on Amazon, called Heart Medicine, the Ayahuasca assisted therapy and the integration process. And wow, I never thought I'm gonna write a book. That was not my conscious intention. One of the reasons I wanted to write the book is to share part of my personal journey in the hope to inspire and support other people who are going through similar experiences. And the other part was more like an educational part. So this framework that I use, in my own practice with the medicine and even without the medicine, this integration process, which is basically just means coming back to our natural state of wholeness. I use a particular framework that I didn't invent, but I kind of, put together based on my own experience and all the things that I learned. And I have very good results, with this framework. So literally, a lot of people, who I was honored to support on their journey, people say that it's a miracle what they went through, but, from my perspective, it's just healing, So I think you can heal and recover, from anything. And this framework that I used, proven to be most effective, in my practice. So literally, like, everybody who did that program had a full recovery from whatever they came with, and so I was so excited, to experience this, that I really wanted to share it with the world, because I work mostly on one-on-one, and I'm committed for a longer time, with one person. So I have physical limitations of how many people I can take on and support. So I wanted to really put this book out to make this framework more available for a wider audience who maybe don't have a chance to work with me personally, or to, participate in my program, but they are, going through similar experiences. So I wanted to really support them. I mean, it's not the same like, having a personal therapist, and I still recommend you have a therapist and the guide, who can personally support you, but it can give you, some ideas, and hopefully clarify some misconceptions, like, for example, a lot of people look at this medicine, the ayahuasca, as some kind of magic pill, like that, oh, I'm gonna just go to ceremony or ceremonies, and then the medicine will heal me, and it will take all my troubles away, and I'm gonna come out of the ceremony, and I'm gonna be happy forever after, or I don't know how they say, the Hollywood, thing. And, this is certainly not the case. This is not a magic pill. This is a powerful ally that can help us to support us, on our healing journey. But we are the healers, we have to put in all that work. We need to make the necessary changes that we desire in our life. No medicine, no shaman, no healer, no famous person can do that for us, because if it would be possible, then everybody would just drink the medicine and would be happy, like,
Yeah.
so it doesn't work that way. If I could heal somebody and process somebody else's pain, I would be a zillionaire, but that's not the case, so that was, also one of my motivation with the book, to have to educate people who choose to work with this medicine, because I was certainly very naive, when I went to Peru, and I did think the same thing, that I'm just going on this training, and I'm going to be in the jungle with the medicine, and I'm going to come out enlightened and happily ever after, and that's not what happened. I had just many dark nights of the soul, one after the other, and I'm like, what is happening here? You know, like
It
I don't.
doesn't work.
Exactly, it doesn't work. So I thought, oh, maybe I didn't drink enough medicine. I just have another ceremony, and then that resulted in a total like breakdown, you know,
Oh my
and
God.
you know, putting myself back together from then. So yeah, just really sharing information because we don't have a lot of written information. Now it's much better the last few years, but when I started 10 years ago, there was a handful of books written by some people about their own individual journeys and stuff, which is, you know, also you cannot compare your experience
Right.
with
It's
another
always
person.
different.
Yeah, and it's different for you every time you go, and it's different for everybody. So you sit in a circle with like 10 other people, and everybody will have a very different experience. And you are in
Right.
the same place, and you are drinking the same medicine, and you are listening to the same songs, and still. So just really, you know, helping people to understand what they are getting into and how to best prepare, and, you know, what are some tools and some approaches that they can use, you know, after, you know, the ceremony and after the retreat, you know, to continue their healing journey. So I'm super, you know, proud that the book, you know, was published, I think the year before last in November, and it's doing very well. And I get, you know, emails from people who read the book, and it's really, yeah, I'm really happy, you know, that I could make that happen. And probably there will be more books, because now I'm like, oh, that's old news. I have so much more to say since then.
I
But
love that.
it's a big undertaking, you know, to write a book. So thank you for, you know, having this opportunity to share that here.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the link on the bottom, and you know, I'm thinking I'll grab the book, and then maybe we can do another conversation about the book.
Yes, that would be awesome. I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nina. I know it's after the hour, and hopefully we'll see you again soon, because I think there is so much that you have to offer all of us. And I honestly love your channel, so I really hope people check it out, because it's so much information, and really good information, not just like someone talking nonsense. This is valuable information, and I hope people really do appreciate you and your channel and your energy and your book. I mean, I'm looking forward to reading it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. And I have also a room on Clubhouse. I don't know if you are familiar with that app. People can download it on their phone. It's like an audio app, so it's no
Okay.
video or pictures, but it's a live group that we do every second Tuesday about ayahuasca assisted therapy and ayahuasca integration. So it's an interactive room, and people can pop in, ask questions, share their experiences. So it's just really, you know, learning together and sharing experiences and sharing good information. So yeah, if you are on Clubhouse, or your listeners are on Clubhouse, like join my club, Healing and Awakening, and then you will see these rooms listed, you know, every 2 weeks, and you are welcome to come in and listen. And now they have a new feature when the rooms are recorded, so if you cannot join during that time, you can just go back and listen to the
That's
room.
awesome. So yeah, definitely. If you have a link, send it to me so I can put it
Okay,
on
I
the
will.
description, so anyone can come in and listen.
Yeah, and also speak, you know, like it's interactive. So if you have a
Okay.
question that you want to ask me personally, you know, that's a space, you know, when I'm available.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
See you guys on the